But you know what? Today I've been quiet for a while. I think you, more especially our South African family, I'm pretty sure you guys, you know about the tragedy that happened in East London a few days ago, or like last week, at Enyobeni Tavern. I want us to talk about that. You know, we had a very heart-to-heart conversation with my mother. My mother has two girls, myself and my sister, who is younger than me, and she's a single parent, right? So basically, she actually called me when this happened, and she said, you know what, Unati, I am sad about what happened there, because I'm just thinking about those parents who I identify with. You know, my mother is a nurse, okay, and single parent. I remember when I was 14, that was the first time I had my ID book. South Africans would know that book. It's identity book. You open bank accounts with it. Basically, it's more like a SIM card if you're in Canada. So that was the first time I had that book. And she would go to, if you're a nurse here, there's a terminology they use called moonlighting. She would go to Johannesburg, to Pretoria, you know, to do the moonlighting, because in our town, our town, Kala, there wasn't much money she was earning there. So she would go away to Johannesburg. And I was 14 at the time. My sister was 10, turning 11 that year. So where she's going with me with this conversation is like, this could have happened to me. Thank you. And she got really emotional, you know, she was very emotional. And she said, not only would I go moonlight, I would come back and work night shifts. I would come back and work night shifts. You had every opportunity, every chance to go out and be like these little kids, those 13-year-olds, those 14-year-olds, those 17-year-olds that were at Enyobeni. And she went in and she went on and said, I feel terrible for those parents, because if it was not for God, if it wasn't for God, for me to protect you, to come to your heart and guide you, because you had every opportunity. Not only did I do that, I went ahead. When you started university, I left for UK. I would send you money, guys, so that you can have something. You had also money to do anything you wanted to do. You could have started drugs, but you did not. I thank God for that. So why I'm narrating this story, with what happened there, let's reflect as parents. These are the kids. My child is turning 14 this year. These kids, I could be their mother. All right. I want us to not to judge that situation and judge those parents. We don't know the situations. Those are the kids that could probably come from families like mine, and coming from South Africa. If you are South African here, you will know this. Most of us are raised by single parents that have second, third, fourth job. It's sad. The economy is quite sad. You know, South African economy. You know, those who are poor, they are poor. Those who are rich, they are rich. This is the real fact. Okay, so parents tend to work in the evenings and they leave their children. So that could be the scenario there. Oh, the scenario, both parents are there. But the reality is the parenting, you know, us parents of today, this generation of parents, we are in trouble. I will make an example. I live in Canada, just by my family, just the four of us. We don't have help here from a grandmother, a grandfather, an aunt. We just by ourselves. Yes, we've made friends, but everyone has his or her own life. All right. It's unlike back in the day where there were aunts, there were parents. You know, it was not only your mother or your father who disciplined you. You know, there's so many changes that have occurred in the last decade, actually 2 or 3 decades, right? So this parenting today, it's so hard because people are living in Joburg. You are in Johannesburg. How often do you go to your village to see your parents? How often your mother, your aunt, comes up to Johannesburg to help you with your children? Most of you guys are relying on your helpers, right? There's so many things. But then at the same time, I want us to also go back to the history of our country. South Africa, we come from a painful apartheid era where families were dispersed. Part of big part of why our homes are led by single parents. We have no family structure. We don't have family units. Our grandparents went by Teba to the mines. Our grandparents went to the exile. I come from a political family. I've seen one of my uncles dying from suicide because he was a product of PTSD, depression, right? His father left. Do you understand? For the political reasons. So we come from a background where family structure is not there, really, in South Africa. It's not there. So even now, the discipline that is there in families, it takes, it's going to need God, guys. We need God, because this generation of children we are raising today, yes, we still need some ideas from the 1960s, from the 1970 parenting. But the reality is, if you are not willing to negotiate these principles, these values with your children, unfortunately, the children today, they're not scared. They're fearless, which is a good feature. Kids, it's good that they must be fearless. But then also fear, it's a pet, really phenomenon, because now there's so many things. In our time, I don't remember anyone who would go to rehab for drug addiction. Today, I have as young as 13 or 14-year-old kids addicted to alcohol, to drugs. This is a reality, guys. So we are facing an elephant, really. We're facing an elephant in our parenting. And also, parents, I want you to, we actually need to come up with a webinar here. I would like us to do a webinar on parenting, because there's also a thin line with all what's happening in the schools. Kids, there's no corporal punishment. That was abolished. And part of it now, the governments globally, parents are stuck, they are tied, they don't know how to discipline their children. All right? Because parents know what they know, what their parents did in the 60s, in the 70s. Parents are stuck today. How are they? Because my generation, if I am not willing to learn the new ways of parenting now, I've lost it. So now we need to come together as parents and come up with all the help. We need to advise each other. How do we parent the generation, the 2000, because they call them 2K in South Africa, the 2K generation, the Generation Z, the Z generation. How do we show up to them in the manner that connects with them, that will bring them to their best selves? How do we also show up? Because also there's also lacking from our end. Parents today, they are saying their kids are not listening. But the question I want us to ask ourselves, how are we showing up to our children? Are we exemplary? What do we do in front of them? What principles and values are we imparting on them? Now, these are the questions we need to ask ourselves, so that we don't go around and say our kids are not listening. What models? How are we modeling this parenting we want for these kids to have?